So valve clearance check on the Interceptor 1000. You start from removing the side panels. Is those panels here. You just literally unclip them, it's easy. So one on the right, one on the left. Then you remove the fuel tank. This will take literally a minute as well. The fuel tank is secured with the top bolt here and with the bottom bolt just here. And then you just unplug the red connector and the fuel line that comes to the fuel tank, and the fuel tank comes off. Obviously before you do that, switch the fuel tap into off position, and then we drain the coolant, and then we'll go ahead with removing all the piping and taking the valve covers off. Okay, so I have my pan ready. There's two places where you drain the coolant. So there's a little bolt here. This is a 8mm bolt in the frame, and then you've got to remove that hose here, and that's going to be draining the coolant from the water pump. So this clamp needs to be loosened up, and typically those hoses are absolute buggeration to remove. So I've already loosened this 8mm bolt here, and let's drain the coolant now. There we go. Woo! Alright, so most of the coolant is drained from there. Now to remove the radiator, the lower radiator, because this bike has two. You obviously need to loosen up that clamp here and then just pull the hose. Come on, come on, come on. Right, so removing this radiator, the bottom radiator, there's going to be 3 bolts holding it. There's one here, the other one there, and one at the very top here, which you can't see now, but I'll show it in a minute. And obviously that hose has to be unplugged as well. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'm actually removing the top bolt first. It's a 10mm bolt, and now it should just come off by hand, and it does. But you know, I've switched the ratchet to a tougher one because this bugger was just sitting there so tight. Okay then, to remove this radiator, unfortunately there's a bit of a problem because you see those 2 wires here, there's a blue and brown wire. Blue and brown wires actually supply power to the fans on the radiator. So to remove the radiator, you've got to unplug those 2 wires on the right hand side. So this is the right hand side of the bike, and here behind the fairing you've got this clip, so you've got to take this off. That's what it looks like, and you see the wires exposed, and then you're going to have those plugs here. So we need to unplug the brown one and the blue one, and then the radiator will come off. Alright then, so as you can see here, I'm waving both plugs, so I've unplugged them. So I'm going to hold the radiator by hand and get those wires out. Okay, I've got them here, and now the radiator will just fall nicely. Boom. Alright, so as you can see, it leaves me with the front cylinders nicely exposed, and so now I'm going to remove all the spark plug cups, and that's because we want to make sure that we're on the top dead center on the compression stroke. Alright, so let's remove those plugs, and if you wonder, this is 18mm spark plug tool. Alright, so the spark plugs coming out nicely. So I'm just going to remove all 4 spark plugs now, and I'll see you in a minute. Alright folks, so here at the top of the engine, you're going to have to remove some of those breather pipes, because obviously you need to get access to this valve cover. So this breather pipe comes off nicely and easily, and there's that one here, which also comes off fairly easily. In fact, you can remove it completely for now. I think it's just going to be way easier to move around here without it. The ignition coils will have to be taken off, and then I think we're going to be nearly there. So spark plug caps off and off, and now I'm going to remove the ignition coils. Okay, so bolts removed, and to be honest with you, man, I'm just gonna hang them like this. I don't have to. You don't have to actually completely get them off. And now we need to remove this hose here in the middle that supplies the fuel to the carburetors. Yeah, and that rail here, I think it's made of plastic, so you got to be careful not to break it. So don't just pull on it. You need to pry it and be sort of careful about it. Right, so take a closer look. Comes off really easily. Okay, there's that little hose here to the reservoir, coolant reservoir, which needs to be removed as well. There we go. Okay, so that hose is also out the way. Alright, so now removing those. Those are not torqued up really massively. So, oh, that one was, okay. So to remove those, it will only take a few moments. So at that point, you've only got one more hose here. See, there's a hose attached to this port in the cover, so that needs to be removed. So I'll get this clamp off and pull the hose, and then I can remove the cover. Okay, so to remove that hose, unfortunately I'm going to have to move this reservoir as well, but that's no problem. It's only held by this 10mm bolt here, so I will quickly get this off. There we go. Okay, that comes off easily, and now I have access to the hose, which I can just pull, and we're done. I can now remove this cover. Alright, so theoretically this should come off fairly easily. This in the past, I can't really remember how I blow. There we go. Alright, so cover is off. Right, so same here. Okay, the bottom ones are loose. The top ones are loose too. Oh, those are different look. A bit shorter. Okay. And it's released. Alright peeps, at that point you need to remove this cover here. This will allow you to turn the engine to change the positions of pistons in the valve clearance check procedure. Once the cover comes off, you're going to have a tiny little oil spillage, but that's normal and to be expected. There we go, that's our cover off. Alright peeps, so now I'm going to remove the remaining two spark plugs. Okay, and then we're going to be able to start the fun part, checking the valve clearance on this Interceptor. Alright, so let's talk about this. To turn the engine, you're going to be using a ratchet or some spanner. This is 17mm bolt here, so I'm going to be doing the ratchet method. You could also move this engine by having it in, say, 5th gear and then just turning the wheel, having the bike on a center stand, but I prefer this method here. Now, if you take a closer look here on those cases, you see this little white line I've made? This is where those crankcases meet. This is the top crankcase, and here we've got the bottom crankcase. So this is where they meet. And the point of reference is that white line here. Now on this generator here, you'll have marks T13 and T24. So T13 relates to cylinders 1 and 3, and T24 relates to cylinders 2 and 4. Now, to check the clearance on the particular cylinder, you need to have the piston at the top dead center of the compression stroke. So how would you know you're at the top dead center of the compression stroke? What you could do is, you could put your finger into the spark plug hole, okay? And so essentially what you do, imagine this is a spark plug hole, you would put your finger there to clog it, and then you would be turning the engine, and when you feel air trying to push your finger out, that means that the piston is actually coming up. So this is your compression stroke. And by the way, if you look at the bike like this, alright, the cylinders are, that's number 1, that's number 2, okay, that's number 3, and that's number 4. So it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Another way to check if you're at TDC is to grab a pick like this, for instance, and put it into the spark plug hole and see how deep you are. You see, this is actually pretty, I can tell that the piston is actually at the very top. So if we move to the front cylinders now, and I put my pick in, it actually goes a lot deeper. So I know that cylinder isn't at TDC. So that's another way to check where you are. Okay, so let's have a look. So this is cylinder number 1 on the rear bank. And I'm going to put some light in there and hope you can see this. I'm going to magnify. Can you see in that spark plug hole, you can actually see the piston? See how close it is? So that's another way of checking if you're at TDC. You can actually visually see it. Okay peeps, so have a look at this. I've got T13 mark on this rotor, equalizing with the white line here, which is where the crankcases meet. I am now measuring the clearance for the cylinder number 1, which is the rear bank here, the left hand side cylinder. I'm gonna go with the method specified by the service manual, so that will be 2 feeler gauges. Now they want us to set the clearance as 5/1000 of an inch for both valves here. So I've got my first feeler gauge, and as you can see, that one goes in there with a little drag, which is what they want, so I'll put it in there. And then they want us to put the second one in as well, and that one doesn't want to go in. Okay, so this one I can already tell you is a bit tighter, so I'll open it up a bit. So now look how easily it goes in, and you want this gauge to go in and out with a little drag. So, and that's about it. That's about that. So let's just check it again. Okay, how about the other one? That's a bit too loose, so I'll turn it a bit. And that's correct. So I've got 5 thou on both of those valves. And now the tricky job will be to turn the nuts so the clearance won't change. So what you've got to do is you've got to use your wrench, hold the nuts in the same position, and just secure it. Okay, now the same with the other one. Okay, so they're slightly snug. Okay, so now I just need to secure those nuts well. Okay, and let's recheck it. Okay, I've got a slight drag here. Excellent. And I've got a slight drag here, that's fantastic. Okay, now, so again, cylinder number 1, this time intake side. This is going to be difficult to show because the light isn't very good, but 5 thou goes in nicely with the drag when it comes to this valve here. But look what's going to happen with that valve here. It's just a bit too loose. Okay, so that one there is correct, but this one here is a bit too loose. So what I need to do is I need to put my feeler gauge in. See how loose it is? It doesn't even want to stay there, it just pops out. Okay, so I'm going to have it in. Let's just, you see how loose it is? And now if I turn the adjuster, now I've turned it so hard that I can't even get it out. And that way I get a moderate drag. So that's the position that I want. Okay. So I need to remember. Okay. And when I turn the nut, I also control the adjuster, making sure it doesn't move. Okay. So let's have a look at it now. And I've got a moderate drag, which is great. And that one there, I've got the same thing. Okay. Okay peeps, so as you can see, T13 is aligned with the white line, and we've just adjusted cylinder number 1. So what you've got to do now is you need to turn the crank 90 degrees counterclockwise, okay, to align the T24 mark of the line, and that way we can start adjusting cylinder number 4. Okay, so we are here at the right hand side of the motorcycle at the front. Cylinder number 4, piston at the top dead center, compression stroke. We can easily check it by putting a screwdriver in the spark plug hole, and I can feel the piston there. Okay, so I've got both feeler gauges in there, so now I've got it all set. All I've got to do now is just securing those nuts. Okay, still holding the adjuster in place so adjustment doesn't change. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, for the bottom valve, those 2 exhaust valves, and let's see what we've got here. Okay, so here 5 thou goes in. Let's check the other one here. On this valve here, 5 thou goes in loosely, and on this one here, it's really tight. Okay, so I've loosened up this lock nut. Now that's way too loose. And that feels about right. Screwdriver in place. And now I'm going to get it snug. Which is good. So that concludes cylinder number 4. Let's go for the next cylinder. Okay, so we've done cylinders number 1 and number 4. Now we need to turn the crank from this position 270 degrees counterclockwise to get the T13 marks again. Okay, there we go. And that way we'll be able to adjust cylinder number 3. Okay, so we are now at cylinder number 3. This is the rear cylinder, of course, the right on the right hand side. So once again, loosen this up a bit. In fact, that one too. So that is way too loose. So let's just turn the adjuster a bit. And that's about okay. Okay. First one. Okay. And second one. Okay, so if I just lock it now. Okay. Okay, perfect. Here we have it, cylinder number 3 done. Right folks, so I have now moved it 90 degrees counterclockwise, so that direction, to get to 4 mark with the line. And then we're checking the last cylinder, which is cylinder number 2. So that's the front bank, left hand side. Okay folks, so I appreciate the view isn't the best. It's really difficult to capture it with this camera, but both filler gauges fit in nicely. This is 5 thou. So the exhaust valves are okay here. Right. Now let's check the intake. As you can see, 5 thou on the intake goes in fairly loosely. Okay, on both valves, so that means, because I've actually got, I mean, it could probably do with slight loosening it up, but you know what, 5 thou according to service manual is okay as well, so it's not really that tight with 5 thou. So I'll keep it at that, and that concludes your valve clearance check and adjustment on VF1000 Interceptor.